The first light of morning stretches gently across the hills and valleys of ancient Greece, spilling over olive groves, scattered terraces, and rugged limestone ridges. A soft mist lingers in low-lying areas, curling like thin smoke around the trunks of gnarled trees, catching the pale gold of the sun and shimmering with tiny beads of dew. The air is cool and still, carrying the faint scent of damp earth, wild herbs, and the faint tang of salt from distant seas. Every sound is muted at this hour. The distant bleat of a goat, the slow drip of condensation from leaves, the quiet rustle of birds waking and stretching their wings. The world seems to hold its breath, poised between night and day, a moment of fragile balance. In the small clusters of stone houses and simple dwellings, villagers awaken slowly. A man steps barefoot onto the rough, uneven path outside his home, feeling the cold of early morning stone pressed under his toes. He inhales deeply, savoring the crisp, earthy scent of the land, noticing how the soil smells differently after the dew has soaked it overnight. In a nearby olive grove, a woman gently shakes the leaves of young trees, letting droplets of water fall onto her hands. She feels the rough bark beneath her fingers, the sticky texture of the sap, and the smoothness of small, ripening olives, contemplating the slow patience required to nurture life from land that can be harsh and unforgiving. In another part of the village, children tread carefully over wet stone terraces, peering curiously at puddles that reflect the awakening sky. The faint ripple of water disturbed by their feet sends glimmers across the surface, a reflection of the slow rhythm of daily life. An elderly villager, sitting on a low bench beside a clay jar of water, observes them quietly. He watches how their small gestures mirror those of adults, how their eyes study the land as though learning its secrets. Internal reflection surfaces here. Life in this rugged, fragmented terrain requires attentiveness, not only to the earth but to the cycles of sun, rain, and wind. Survival, he knows, depends on the quiet acquisition of knowledge, patience, and the repetition of careful observation. Smoke begins to curl from hearths, carrying the smell of burning olive wood, slightly resinous and warm, mingling with the scent of baking bread and grains simmering in clay pots. The sound of morning carries softly across terraces, the gentle clatter of cooking utensils, the soft scratching of feet on stone floors, the occasional low murmur of a neighbor exchanging greetings. Every movement is deliberate. A woman bends to lift a bundle of grain, feeling its weight, the scratchy husks between her fingers. A man draws water from a clay jar, tilting it carefully, listening to the liquid slosh and hearing the soft thud as it settles. Beyond the village, the hills and valleys extend into a patchwork of farmland and natural vegetation. Terraces cling to slopes, their stones warm in the morning sun, providing both shelter for soil and a silent testament to human ingenuity. Paths wind between small groves of olive and fig trees, carrying the faint perfume of flowering herbs. The low hum of bees can be heard, droning over the clatter of distant goats and the soft rustle of leaves in a gentle breeze. Observing these patterns, the villagers recognize the interconnectedness of life. How each sound, each smell, each movement has its place, its rhythm, its role in sustaining a fragile yet persistent harmony. As the sun rises higher, golden light spills into the valleys, highlighting textures that were invisible in the mist. A young man leans on a rough-hewn staff at the edge of a stone terrace, feeling the warmth of sun on his back and the coolness of the shadow beneath the overhanging rocks. He breathes deeply, sensing how the slope of the land, the flow of air, and the sound of distant water shape his understanding of the world. He reflects on how the hills, the valleys, and the sea are teachers, offering lessons in endurance, patience, and attention. Here, in these small observations, he recognizes the foundations of the city-state yet to be built. Attentive observation, careful cultivation, and an intimate knowledge of the land and its rhythms. The village gradually stirs into motion. Chickens cluck softly, scratching the earth in search of grain. Goats bleat insistently, nudging each other for space. The low murmur of human voices carries as families prepare for the day, mending clothes, sharpening tools, collecting water, and inspecting terraces. The rhythm of their actions mirrors the natural flow of the environment, the rise and fall of the wind, the shift of shadows across stone, the faint trickle of water in carved channels. Each repetition, each careful motion, reinforces the quiet structure of life here, embedding order into the daily routine without force or ceremony. In these early hours, reflection deepens. The villagers recognize that life is a dialogue with the land. Every terrace carved, every tree tended, every path walked contributes to the stability and resilience of the community. Observing, repeating, and attending to the smallest details cultivates wisdom. One can feel the pulse of the hills and valleys in the rhythm of footsteps on stone, the tapping of tools, and the rustle of olive leaves. There is an internal harmony born from attunement to the world, an understanding that order does not arise suddenly, but is coaxed patiently from attention and care. As the morning matures, the mist begins to lift fully from the valleys, revealing distant hills fading into pale blue. The sun casts long shadows, glinting off stone walls and rooftops, accentuating the rugged textures of terraces, homes, and olive groves. Birds take flight, their wings slicing through the still air, leaving only faint echoes behind. The villagers pause for a moment, watching the world awaken, sensing the continuity of life across hills and valleys, and reflecting on their own place within this intricate web. By mid-morning, small labor begins in earnest. Farmers step carefully along terraces, planting seeds and inspecting irrigation channels. Children imitate adults, learning the rhythm of work, the weight of tools, the patterns of soil and water. Smoke rises steadily from hearths, merging with the earthy scent of tilled land and the subtle fragrance of herbs in bloom. Every step, every gesture, every breath is a slow, deliberate motion contributing to a shared, enduring rhythm. Internal reflection deepens further. The villagers understand that their survival and prosperity are not dictated by a single act, but by repetition, observation, and the quiet accumulation of knowledge. The hills, terraces, olive trees, and stone houses are not merely landscape. They are living, breathing partners in the unfolding narrative of community. They teach patience, resilience, and the subtle artistry of order. In this way, the city-states of Greece, not yet formed but gestating in these quiet valleys, begin their slow, attentive growth, rooted in the intimate observation of land, sky, and human effort. And so the morning stretches, a careful symphony of light, scent, sound, and motion. Mist lifts, fires burn, footsteps echo on stone, and the villagers continue their measured movements. With each passing hour, the land teaches and the people learn. Each gesture repeated, each observation noted, is a seed for the structured, enduring society that will emerge over centuries. In this gentle, immersive rhythm, the foundations of Greek civilization take shape, as much in the silent meditation of human attention as in stone, wood, and soil. As the hills and valleys warm under the gentle advance of morning, small groups of villagers gather along defensible hilltops and fertile plains, pausing to consider the land with quiet attentiveness. Every choice of placement carries meaning: the slope of the ground, the depth of the soil, the visibility of the surrounding valleys. Stone foundations are selected with care, each rock weighed, touched, and felt for stability. Fingers brush over rough surfaces, tracing cracks and imperfections, measuring how they might bear the weight of future walls. The air is thick with the subtle scent of wet clay and the sharper tang of freshly split timber, mingling with the earthy aroma of soil recently turned by the hands of laborers. Morning routines are slow and deliberate. Men gather timber from nearby groves, noting the grain and texture of each branch, while others carry clay in baskets woven from reeds, the fibers rough under bare palms. Children watch quietly, stepping around the adults, learning to lift, balance, and carry without disturbing the fragile rhythm of work. Women measure spaces for homes and communal structures, running their hands along the ground as if tracing invisible lines, feeling the slight give of soft earth and the firm resistance of stone. Paths are carved gradually, stones placed to guide water runoff and prevent erosion, each action a meditation on harmony with the terrain rather than domination over it. The tactile textures of construction dominate the senses. Splintered wood that pricks fingers, the cold smoothness of river-rounded stones and clay that yields under pressure, warm from the sun but still moist from the morning dew. Every step, every placement is deliberate. The rhythm of work, carry, measure, place, adjust, becomes almost hypnotic, a reflection of the patience that survival here demands. Villagers sense that their choices now will shape not only their daily lives, but the legacy of those who will follow. As walls rise slowly, smoke curls from small hearths where women knead dough or heat water. The smell is familiar, grounding. It carries the promise of nourishment, of continuity. The soundscape is understated yet alive. The dull thud of stones meeting one another, the scraping of wood against wood, the soft rustle of straw or reeds as roofs take shape. Conversations are muted, often replaced by shared glances or gestures, a silent understanding of shared purpose that requires no words to convey. Children wander through the half-built spaces, hands brushing against walls, tracing grooves in clay or cracks in stone. Their observations are patient and reflective, learning the language of construction by touch, sight, and repetition. Occasionally, a small stone will slip or clay will crumble, prompting a pause, a quiet correction, and renewed attention. Each minor error is absorbed into a larger rhythm, teaching resilience and careful consideration. In these moments, learning is slow, attentive, and intertwined with the physical world. The placement of each dwelling is dictated not just by defense or fertility, but by subtle environmental rhythms. Builders watch the wind as it threads between ridges, nodding where gusts will scatter dust or chill hearths. They observe how sunlight moves over terraces, marking the angles and intensity across the course of the day. Decisions are made with awareness that the land itself is an active participant in daily life. Villagers learn to interpret these signs, where shadows lengthen, where morning mist lingers longest, where water gathers naturally, and to align their settlements accordingly. As the day progresses, communal enclosures for animals take shape. Wooden posts are driven into the ground with careful, measured blows, tied with ropes of twisted fibers. Sheep and goats are guided into temporary pens, their soft bleats blending with the occasional crack of timber or the shuffle of stones. Livestock becomes a living marker of human ingenuity, a tangible reminder of the connection between people and land. Reflection arises naturally here. The subtle attentiveness required to nurture and guide animals mirrors the patience necessary to construct durable homes, and in turn, a sustainable community. By midday, villagers pause to drink from stone-lined wells or shallow channels carved to direct rainwater. Fingers trail along cool water, feeling its flow, noting the subtle shifts in temperature and clarity. The tactile intimacy of water against skin reinforces a quiet awareness of the natural resources that shape survival. Conversations remain gentle, often contemplative, as elders discuss placement of new walls, potential expansions, or how best to tend both garden and herd. Every decision is made slowly, tested against both physical experience and communal memory. Children continue to observe and imitate. Some carry small stones to reinforce walls, others sweep terraces or gather reeds for roofing. The repetition of these small tasks fosters not only skill but a reflective patience, as the act of contributing becomes a lesson in rhythm, diligence, and communal responsibility. Parents watch silently, offering guidance through gestures rather than words, reinforcing the understanding that learning here is embedded in daily action, not abstract instruction. As afternoon stretches into evening, dust settles over newly constructed walls and terraces. The scent of warm stone, dry clay, and sun-baked earth mingles with the lingering aroma of cooking fires. Shadows lengthen slowly across the valleys, tracing the contours of human endeavor and natural formations alike. Villagers pause at intervals to watch sunlight fade, fingers tracing lines in clay, feeling the texture of stone walls, listening to the soft bleating of goats and the occasional call of distant birds. Each observation is a meditation, a quiet recognition that life unfolds in both immediate action and subtle, ongoing patterns. By the time the sun dips behind distant hills, the first settlements have taken shape in both physical and mental landscapes. People gather near small fires, hands warmed by embers, hearts attuned to the rhythm of labor and landscape. Conversation is soft, reflective, filled with planning and memory, the steady accumulation of experience that guides both present action and future choices. In these moments, the land, the labor, and the people exist in a careful, deliberate balance, a nascent sense of home forged through patience, attention, and shared purpose. As night falls, the faint smell of smoke lingers, mixed with the earthy scent of damp terraces and gathered timber. The hilltops, now dotted with half-built dwellings, look down on sleeping valleys, observing the land that will sustain them through seasons and years. Stars emerge one by one, mirrored faintly in dew-glimmering fields. The quiet of evening encourages reflection. The subtle shaping of human order in response to natural rhythms, the slow formation of identity through collective labor, and the knowledge that each careful choice leaves a trace, not only in stone or clay, but in the invisible scaffolding of community, patience, and mindful attention. In this way, the first settlements do more than shelter. They teach. Every wall, every terrace, every path carved through soil and stone becomes a lesson in observation, a meditation in action, and a foundation upon which generations will build. The rhythm of the day, rise, observe, labor, pause, reflect, repeats itself gently, embedding the principles of patience, attentiveness, and collective responsibility into the hearts of those who dwell here. And as the hills and plains drift into night, the settlements stand as quiet witnesses to the slow unfolding of human order, grounded in the land itself, and guided by the steady, unhurried pulse of careful, deliberate living. The day begins gently, with sunlight spilling across terraced fields and olive groves, warming dew-laden leaves and illuminating the soft curve of distant hills. Villagers emerge from their half-built homes, feeling the coolness of stone underfoot, the texture of earth clinging faintly to bare toes, and the crisp scent of morning air tinged with salt from the nearby sea. There is no rush. The rhythm of labor is dictated by the land itself, by the rising sun, by the subtle cues of nature that guide every movement. Women move among the terraces, grinding grain with measured, repetitive motions. Their hands brush against smooth stones, feeling the slight roughness as the kernels yield to pressure. The smell of freshly ground barley rises, mingling with the sweet, earthy aroma of olive trees and the faint tang of sea breeze. Fingers pause often to adjust the angle of the stone, to feel for consistency, as if the rhythm of grinding is both a practical act and a meditation. Children sit nearby, small hands brushing at stray grains, learning patience and technique not through instruction, but through quiet observation and imitation. Men tend to the fields, plowing narrow furrows along terraces, the soil yielding under wooden plows, its rich scent rising in the warmth of the sun. Water channels, carefully constructed along the slopes, trickle steadily, carrying nourishment to roots hidden beneath the earth. Every movement is deliberate. The angle of the plow, the weight of the soil, the coordination of oxen with guiding hands. Reflection comes naturally here, an understanding that these actions, repeated slowly and attentively, sustain life across seasons and years. The sea, not far from the fields, offers its own rhythm. Fishermen cast nets into calm coves, their hands rough from rope and salt, eyes following the faint ripple of water as it moves beneath the boat. The gentle slap of waves against hulls, the distant cry of gulls, the salty tang in the air, all converge to create a meditative sensory environment. Each throw of the net, each careful tug and sweep, is slow and intentional. Fingers feel for texture and tension, reading water movement and subtle currents. Reflection takes root in patience and attentiveness, in understanding that success comes not from force but from attunement to subtle patterns. Within gardens, small herbs and vegetables are tended with the same attentive care. Leaves are brushed gently to remove morning dew, soil is pressed lightly around young shoots, and water is poured slowly, creating a small, ritualized interaction between human care and natural growth. Each plant becomes a living teacher. Notice how it bends toward the sun, how soil retains moisture, how insects and birds interact with the space. Observation here cultivates thoughtfulness, a sensitivity to cause and effect, and the quiet satisfaction of contributing to life's slow unfolding. Along the terraces, olives are plucked with care, hands moving slowly over rough bark and smooth, firm fruits. The aroma of olive oil pressed freshly from collected olives mingles with sun-warmed earth and the faint, lingering scent of the sea. Children, guided by parents, feel the weight of each fruit, learning the rhythm of picking without disturbing branches or leaves. Each repeated motion becomes a lesson in precision, patience, and harmony with natural cycles. As the sun climbs higher, the combined sounds of labor, the scraping of plowshares, the rhythmic grinding of stones, the faint bleating of goats, and the gentle lapping of waves, form a continuous, almost hypnotic cadence. Villagers move in sync with this rhythm, their bodies and minds adapting to the natural pace of work. Thought and action become intertwined. Internal reflection flows freely, considering not only the practical needs of today, but also the implications for tomorrow and for generations yet to come. Fishermen return with nets full of silvery fish, their scales glinting faintly in sunlight, creating a small spectacle of movement and shimmer. The scent of salt and brine mingles with the aroma of roasting grains from hearths nearby. Men and women work together to clean, prepare, and store the catch. Fingers brush against slippery scales, carefully handling each fish, noting the texture, the subtle differences in size and weight. Every step of this process is performed slowly, attentively, and with deliberate repetition, reinforcing both practical skill and reflective awareness. During midday, the soft heat encourages moments of pause. Villagers gather in shaded groves or beneath pergolas of intertwining branches, hands brushing over cool leaves, ears attuned to distant waves or the soft rustle of wind through grass. Conversations are gentle, deliberate, and often contemplative. Stories of past seasons, of bountiful harvests and harsh winters, circulate quietly, reminding everyone of the continuity of labor and the subtle lessons taught by the land and sea. Children listen, absorbing wisdom not through direct instruction, but through the slow, rhythmic unfolding of narrative, timing, and repetition. In the fields, work resumes as the light shifts, now warmer, more golden. Shadows stretch long across terraces, olive branches sway gently, and water channels glint with reflected sun. Men and women move with awareness, nodding where soil has dried, where weeds threaten young shoots, where water pools too deeply or too sparsely. Every movement is deliberate. The rhythm of sowing, tending, and harvesting mirrors the broader pattern of life, attentive, patient, interconnected, and continuous. At the coastline, small boats glide back and forth with the tide. Nets are cast again, skillfully and slowly, and small fish flicker briefly as they are brought aboard. Hands are careful, tactile, learning the weight, shape, and movement of each catch. Sensory awareness is heightened by the texture of rope, the smell of wet wood, the cold slap of water on skin. Reflection deepens as villagers notice the delicate balance between giving and taking, between patience and action, between human desire and natural provision. By late afternoon, the labor of the day is visible. Terraces are neatly plowed, herbs and vegetables watered, olive branches pruned, and fish sorted and stored. Fires crackle in small kitchens, sending up fragrant smoke that mingles with the scent of sea and earth. Children and adults alike pause to observe the fruits of their careful attention. Fingers run over soft leaves, palms press into cool soil, eyes trace the glint of fish scales and olive oil. The world feels deliberate, measured, and full of subtle, interwoven rhythms. Evening approaches with a calm inevitability. Sunlight softens, casting long shadows across fields and coves. The breeze carries salt, herbs, and soil together, a gentle reminder of the interconnectedness of work, land, and sea. Villagers gather again near fires, their faces warm with exertion and relief. The soft crackle of flames punctuates quiet reflection. Conversations dwell on patterns observed throughout the day, on the successes and failures, on lessons learned from attentive observation and deliberate action. In these final moments of light, internal reflection deepens. Villagers consider how each repeated task, grinding grain, plowing terraces, casting nets, pruning trees, forms a rhythm that sustains life and culture alike. They sense the steady passage of time, not measured in hours or days alone, but in cycles of labor, seasons, and growth. Every moment becomes an opportunity to observe, to act with care, and to align human effort with the quiet, persistent pulse of the natural world. Night falls gradually. Stars emerge over hills and coastline, reflected faintly in water channels and calm coves. The smell of cooking mingles with the earthy scent of terraces and the saltiness of the sea. Villagers rest, hands tired but attentive, bodies attuned to the rhythm of life established through patient observation and steady labor. In these moments, the interdependence of people, land, and water becomes clear, a lesson etched not in words alone, but in the lived experience of daily work and quiet reflection. Through the slow, deliberate cultivation of both earth and sea, the community grows not just in sustenance, but in understanding, patience, and harmony. The rhythm of labor, interrupted only by observation, reflection, and gentle care, creates a foundation of continuity and resilience. Here, life is not a hurried accumulation of tasks, but a measured, sensory-rich engagement with the world, a quiet meditation on survival, cooperation, and the enduring patterns that will guide the city-states through generations yet to come. The morning sun continues its gentle rise, spilling warmth across terraced roofs and narrow stone paths. Light strikes the uneven surfaces of houses built from sun-baked clay and rough-hewn stone, casting long shadows that stretch lazily toward the olive groves and cultivated fields beyond. Villagers stir within these modest homes, moving slowly, deliberately, their actions shaped by years of repetition and the quiet pulse of daily life. The air is thick with subtle fragrances, the faint smoke from hearth fires, the warm, earthy scent of baking grain, and the lingering aroma of dew-soaked soil from nearby gardens. Inside one home, a woman bends over a low clay oven, gently placing flatbreads atop its glowing embers. Her fingers brush against warm, textured surfaces, the roughness of clay contrasted with the softness of dough, and she pauses to inhale the comforting scent of baking bread. Each motion is careful, deliberate, kneading, shaping, and sliding bread onto the hearth in a slow, rhythmic cycle that mirrors the measured cadence of life itself. Nearby, a child sits on the cool stone floor, copying her movements with tentative hands, learning the subtle rhythm of task and observation, absorbing more than skill, the patient engagement with the ordinary, the quiet devotion to continuity. Outside, elders sit beneath the shade of an olive tree, hands resting lightly on weathered knees, eyes scanning the village with measured attention. They mold clay slowly, fingers pressing and shaping with quiet precision, forming pots, bowls, and jars destined for hearths and storage. The soft scraping of tools against the surface of clay forms a background rhythm, punctuated by occasional sighs of concentration and the whisper of wind through leaves. Reflection surfaces naturally here. Each movement, repeated countless times, sustains not only the household but the cultural and practical memory of the community. Children, meanwhile, chase one another among the stone terraces and narrow lanes. Bare feet slap against warm paving stones, laughter mingling with the clatter of wooden toys and the distant bleat of goats grazing nearby. Each chase, each game, is measured and cyclical, following patterns that teach coordination, awareness, and the unspoken rhythm of social interaction. Even in play, Repetition fosters mastery and understanding. A child learns balance by running along a terrace's edge, notices cause and effect by knocking over small piles of stones, senses timing and anticipation in the turns and pauses of a game. The environment itself becomes both teacher and guide, a patient partner in the education of the young. In courtyards and along streets, the faint clatter of tools punctuates the day. Farmers sharpen sickles, mend leather sandals, or repair fishing nets with meticulous care. Each task demands observation, repetition, and patience. Hands brush against rough leather, cool metal, or frayed fibers, fingers attentive to texture and alignment. The sun warms skin and stone alike, casting gentle shadows that deepen the visual rhythm of labor. Reflection emerges naturally in these moments. The small, repetitive acts of daily life are not mere chores, but a slow, continuous practice of attention, responsibility, and harmony. Smoke rises steadily from multiple hearths across the village, mingling with the earthy scent of freshly turned soil from nearby terraces and the faint saltiness drifting from the distant shore. Villagers pause occasionally to breathe deeply, taking in the mingled aromas and feeling themselves connected to both place and people. This breathing, this pause, becomes a ritual of observation itself, reinforcing awareness of the environment and the interdependence of all activity. Each inhalation and exhalation is a quiet acknowledgement of continuity, of life sustained through careful, measured effort. Elders occasionally rise, moving slowly to adjust a clay pot over a fire or to inspect a newly planted terrace. Their eyes trace lines of terraces, the sway of olive branches, and the shimmer of sunlight on small channels of water. They watch children's games, nodding balance, coordination, and attention to surroundings. Observations are silent, absorbed into thought and reflection, guiding future instruction without speech. Leadership is subtle here, not through force or command, but through presence, attention, and the repeated demonstration of attentive care. By mid-morning, the village hums with a layered, immersive rhythm. Women carry small baskets of olives, grain, and herbs, their movements careful, deliberate. Men move through terraces, guiding animals, adjusting irrigation channels, and tending the soil. The combined soundscape, the scrape of tools, the laughter of children, the bleat of goats, the gentle lap of water in channels, forms a gentle, repetitive cadence that encourages observation and reflection. Movement, sound, and smell create a hypnotic backdrop for both labor and contemplation. Meal preparation is an intimate extension of this rhythm. Grain is ground, vegetables are washed, and fish or small livestock are carefully prepared. Fingers brush over textures, coarse barley, smooth pebbles, the slick scales of fish. Steam rises from small pots, carrying the mingled aroma of cooked herbs and roasted grains. Each action is repeated, measured, mindful. Reflection deepens. Daily sustenance is both practical and meditative, connecting villagers to the land, the sea, and each other. The labor of preparing food, like every other repetitive task, forms a bridge between necessity and awareness, practice and contemplation. As afternoon settles, the sun tilts westward, casting soft golden light across terraces and rooftops. Villagers pause, leaning against stone walls or sitting beneath olive trees, observing shadows stretching, leaves trembling in a gentle breeze, and the distant glint of the sea. The slow passage of time is palpable. Each small, ordinary action resonates with the underlying rhythm of the environment. Internal reflection deepens as villagers sense patterns, the movement of light, the subtle changes in wind, the flow of water through channels, understanding that these patterns govern work, play, and survival. Evening draws near, and the village transitions seamlessly into the quiet of preparation for night. Hearth fires glow gently, smoke curling upward, mingling with the fatting scent of sun-warmed stone and distant sea air. Families gather together, children settle after play, and elders move slowly to inspect, adjust, or mend. The repetition of gestures, placing bread near a hearth, brushing soil from hands, checking the alignment of a terrace, anchors the day and reinforces a sense of order and continuity. As darkness approaches, stars begin to peek through the deepening sky, and the air cools, carrying faint fragrances of earth, sea, and herbs. Villagers pause to observe, breathing in the night, reflecting on the day's work, and sensing the continuity of life across seasons and generations. The repetition of daily rituals, labor, play, preparation, reflection, creates a gentle, immersive rhythm that sustains both body and spirit. It is in these ordinary, measured moments that the subtle architecture of society, cooperation, and cultural identity is quietly reinforced. By nightfall, the village is still but alive with quiet energy. Children rest, elders watch, and the glow of hearth fires punctuates shadows across stone and clay. The smells of the day linger, earthy terraces, roasted grain, salt, and sea breeze. Every repeated gesture, every small act of observation and care has formed a mosaic of community life, one that balances labor, reflection, and awareness. Villagers understand without words that survival, social cohesion, and cultural continuity emerge from these quiet, rhythmic acts, an intimate, sensory dialogue between people, place, and time. In this slow, deliberate weaving of daily life, the ordinary becomes extraordinary. Every clatter of tools, every brush of hands against stone or clay, every laughter and sigh contributes to a living rhythm. Observation, repetition, and reflection form the foundation of both survival and culture. Through these small, deliberate moments, villagers cultivate resilience, patience, and an enduring connection to the land, the sea, and each other, preparing them for the growing complexity of settlements, governance, and the shared legacy that will ripple across generations. The sun climbs higher in the sky, spilling a warm, steady light across stone terraces, olive groves, and narrow paths winding through the village. Shadows stretch lazily, mingling with the scent of sun-warmed clay, freshly tilled soil, and the faint saltiness of distant sea breezes. Life continues in quiet, measured cycles. A child sweeps dust from a paved courtyard. An elder sharpens a chisel for shaping clay. A woman carries water from a nearby spring, balancing the weight of the vessel with careful attention. Each motion is deliberate, repeated, and observed. In these subtle patterns, the seeds of communal order begin to take root. In the heart of the village, elders, respected for their experience, wisdom, and skill, move among homes and fields with calm authority. Their steps are measured, their gestures gentle but purposeful. They watch not to command immediately but to observe patterns, to note who works diligently, who learns quickly, and who needs guidance. Their presence alone shapes behavior. Villagers respond instinctively to the attention, adjusting movements, offering assistance, and refining practices. Leadership is quiet here, emerging not from force, but from proximity, observation, and the subtle accumulation of respect over time. In a small courtyard, a group gathers around a low table, clay tablets arranged neatly. The elders' fingers trace grooves on the surface, pressing marks with care. Each stroke, deliberate and slow, carries meaning, allocating water, marking harvested grain, nodding repairs needed for roofs and terraces. Children watch from a distance, learning that thoughtfulness, patience, and meticulous observation are themselves forms of guidance. These gestures, seemingly mundane, encode rules and expectations that quietly structure the rhythm of daily life. Across terraces, farmers pause mid-task to await guidance. A man tilting soil with a wooden hoe senses the elder's gaze, nodding a subtle nod toward a newly planted row. A woman carrying harvested olives shifts slightly to accommodate another's path, understanding without words the hierarchy and coordination that sustain both work and social cohesion. Observation itself becomes a teacher. Patterns are noticed, internalized, and repeated. Reflection emerges in these silent exchanges, a recognition that authority is as much about trust and demonstrated skill as it is about instruction. The village square, a simple open area paved with worn stones, begins to hum with quiet organization. Elders gather to discuss matters of irrigation, communal storage, and seasonal planting. Their voices are measured, each word chosen slowly, repeated for clarity, emphasizing the rhythm of deliberation rather than haste. Villagers nearby pause to listen. They absorb the cadence, the logic, the subtle hierarchy of knowledge. Reflection deepens as people recognize that governance is not abrupt or violent but emerges gradually, through repeated observation, thoughtful speech, and attentive response. Even the smallest interactions carry weight. A child approaches with a question about a stone wall, and an elder kneels slowly, examining the structure with patient care. Fingers trace cracks, measure alignment, and adjust loose stones. Explanations are given with gestures and quiet words, often repeated to ensure comprehension. The child's understanding grows not only from instruction but from the demonstration of care, meticulous attention, and the steady rhythm of repeated acts. Leadership, in this sense, is tangible, embodied, and woven into the fabric of daily life. By mid-afternoon, the village hums with coordinated activity under the subtle guidance of its emerging leaders. Grain is transported to storage, terraces are swept clean, water channels adjusted, and animals tended. Hands brush over rough surfaces, leather straps, and woven baskets, absorbing tactile lessons in balance, tension, and order. Each act is repeated and observed. Patterns solidify into expectations. Reflection surfaces naturally. Authority here is not imposed, but cultivated through consistent presence, patient instruction, and careful attention to the small details of work and interaction. Elders occasionally walk among groups, nodding disagreements, smoothing tensions, and offering quiet suggestions. Their words are few, soft, measured, but the impact is lasting. Villagers internalize the subtle messages. Cooperation is rewarded, diligence is observed, and the collective well-being is paramount. Social cohesion is reinforced not through punishment, but through the repeated, predictable guidance of respected figures, a rhythm that mirrors the slow cycles of planting, harvesting, and the changing light across the landscape. As the sun tilts westward, long shadows stretch across terraces and courtyards, reminding villagers of the slow passage of time and the patterns that structure life. Farmers pause, leaning on hoes, hands dusted with earth, and gaze toward olive groves or distant hills. Women adjust water vessels, inhaling the mingled scents of soil and herbs. In these pauses, reflection deepens. The gradual emergence of local authority mirrors the cycles of nature, slow, deliberate, attentive. Observing, repeating, internalizing. These are the invisible threads that bind community, labor, and leadership together. Evening descends with gentle subtlety. Fires are lit, smoke curling upward, carrying scents of cooking grain and roasting olives into the cooling air. Children settle near elders, listening quietly, absorbing both stories and the rhythm of life. The soft creak of wood, the tapping of tools, the murmurs of conversation. Each sound becomes part of a larger pattern of coordination, reflection, and communal memory. Through these repeated experiences, villagers learn not only skills but the unspoken rules of coexistence, trust, and respect. By nightfall, the village lies bathed in the muted light of stars and a waning moon. Terraces, paths, and rooftops are still but alive with traces of activity. The air carries the scents of earth, herbs, and lingering smoke. Reflection takes hold fully. The emergence of local authority is an organic process, rooted in observation, careful action, and the gentle rhythm of repeated practice. Villagers understand, without needing explicit instruction, that patience, attentiveness, and respect are the foundations of community life. Leadership is not a sudden imposition, but a quiet cultivation, one that nurtures cohesion, stability, and continuity across generations. In these slow, measured moments, the ordinary becomes extraordinary. Each gesture, each repeated act of care, each attentive observation forms the latticework of authority and social structure. The village thrives not through coercion, but through rhythm, reflection, and the subtle guidance of those who have learned to observe, act, and teach with patience. Authority, in its most enduring form, is a living, breathing presence, slow, deliberate, and deeply intertwined with the land, the people, and the passage of time. Morning light stretches across the village once more, illuminating stone-paved paths, terraced olive groves, and the distant shimmer of rivers and coastal waters. The air is crisp with a gentle breeze carrying hints of salt from the sea and the earthy aroma of cultivated soil. Villagers prepare for journeys beyond familiar hills, their movements slow and deliberate, each action weighted with care. A fisherman coiled nets beside his boat, feeling the rough texture of hemp ropes under sun-warmed hands. Women wrap pottery in straw, the smell of clay mingling with the faint sweetness of dried herbs. Children, curious and quiet, watch as elders gather supplies, internalizing the rhythm of preparation and the subtle balance required to venture into spaces beyond the village. Along narrow paths winding through olive groves and valleys, travelers begin to arrive. Footsteps raise clouds of fine dust, and the leather straps of bags creak gently with movement. The sun warms the stones underfoot, while faint bird calls punctuate the otherwise calm morning. Boats drift lazily along rivers, their wooden hulls gliding against gentle ripples, the smell of wet wood mingling with fresh water and algae. Villagers observe every detail: the direction of the wind, the patterns of current, the weight of goods in baskets and vessels. Reflection surfaces naturally. Contact with the wider world requires patience, careful observation, and an understanding of timing, distances, and trust. Small-scale trade emerges organically. Olive oil is poured into clay amphorae, their surfaces cool and rough to the touch. Grains and dried herbs are bundled carefully, secured with soft cords. Wooden boats are loaded, the rhythmic sound of shifting goods and scraping oars providing a gentle, hypnotic background. Travelers from distant valleys approach, their eyes bright with curiosity, hands extended with exchanged goods. Smiles are subtle, gestures deliberate, and every interaction is imbued with the weight of negotiation. The villagers learn quickly. Patience, attentiveness, and careful observation are essential not only for the exchange of goods, but for the cultivation of relationships that endure beyond a single transaction. Along the riverbanks, conversations are measured, soft, and deliberate. Salted fish, freshly woven mats, and polished pottery pass from hand to hand. Elders watch the pace, noting how younger villagers handle negotiation and the care with which they balance assertiveness with courtesy. The rhythm of speech, the cadence of gestures, and the timing of exchanges form a subtle music that teaches more than the mere value of goods. It teaches trust, foresight, and the nuanced understanding of others' needs and intentions. Reflection deepens as villagers recognize that trade is as much about perception, patience, and relational skill as it is about material gain. The tactile world provides constant guidance. The cool, slick surface of a clay jar, the roughness of woven baskets, the soft texture of dried herbs, all communicate information. Observers notice how goods are stacked in boats to maintain balance, how leather straps are adjusted to prevent spillage, how careful placement prevents damage. Each detail reinforces the lesson that preparation, attentiveness, and repeated practice create stability in both material and social interactions. Internal reflection emphasizes that the rhythm of work and trade mirrors the rhythm of the seasons and the slow cycles of planting and harvest. Paths that wind through hills and coastal plains show evidence of repeated passage. Footprints imprint dusty soil, wagon wheels leave faint grooves, and the scent of smoke from distant hearths drifts on the wind. Villagers traveling these routes notice patterns: how long journeys take with certain loads, where water sources appear, where shelter can be found. Observation becomes a teacher, patience a companion, and repetition a guide. Each journey reinforces the delicate balance of trust, preparation, and careful attention to environmental and social cues. Evenings bring reflection. Boats return from rivers or coasts, carrying not only goods but knowledge, news from other settlements, tales of distant markets, and the rhythms of life beyond the hills. Villagers gather in small clusters, noting the timing of arrivals, the variety of goods, and the conduct of traders. The tactile world, clay, leather, wood, woven mats, provides tangible reminders of each day's lessons. Reflection deepens. Trade is a living teacher, illustrating patience, observation, and the careful coordination of multiple variables in space and time. Meals prepared from traded goods emphasize the interdependence of communities. Olive oil drizzles over fresh bread, salted fish is shared, and herbs from distant valleys fill small bowls with fragrance. The sensory richness, the warmth of fire, the smell of roasting food, the tactile feel of clay cups, grounds villagers in the present while reminding them of the networks that support life beyond their immediate homes. Internal reflection lingers. Patience, rhythm, and careful attention to detail are as vital to sustenance as they are to commerce, weaving the community into a larger, interconnected world. Nightfall arrives slowly, stars reflecting faintly in river pools. Fires flicker along paths and terraces, casting shadows that dance among stone houses and olive groves. Observers pause to reflect on the day's exchanges, the trust earned, the goods secured, and the subtle lessons in timing, patience, and cooperation. The rhythm of preparation, travel, and exchange becomes a quiet meditation, linking the villagers' daily life to broader currents of culture, economy, and human connection. The gentle murmur of voices, the soft clinking of traded goods, and the faint scent of smoke and salt create a continuous calming soundscape. Reflection deepens further. Trade is a rhythm, a pattern, a practice of patience and attention that shapes not only the village's economy, but its understanding of order, cooperation, and social cohesion. Lessons from the day are internalized, ready to guide future journeys, negotiations, and interactions with neighbors and strangers alike. By the quiet hours of night, the village rests, boats moored, paths empty, hearths glowing faintly with dying embers. The world beyond is distant, yet ever present in memory and observation. Villagers sleep with the subtle assurance that through rhythm, careful attention, and repeated practice, their community has woven itself into a larger network of exchange, trust, and shared understanding, a foundation upon which culture, cooperation, and prosperity will continue to grow. As the morning light stretches across the hills and valleys, villagers begin to gather upon gentle rises of earth, small stone terraces, and the tops of sun-dappled ridges. The scent of olive groves mingles with the faint aroma of incense and the rich, earthy smell of freshly turned soil. Here, among the simplest constructions, are the earliest sacred spaces, open-air altars of carved stone, low shrines of clay and wood, and modest spaces set aside for offerings, quiet reflection, and the communal marking of time. Women move with careful deliberation, carrying small vessels of olive oil, grains, and dried herbs. The cool touch of stone against warm palms guides their movements, fingers brushing over carved patterns as they place offerings. Men sweep paths leading to the altars, ensuring that footsteps will not disturb the sanctity of the space. Children watch from a distance, their eyes wide with curiosity, learning slowly the cadence of ritual, the measured approach, the pause of breath, the gentle motion of hands. Every gesture is observed, repeated, and internalized, forming a rhythm that resonates quietly through the community. The air is filled with the soft crackle of small fires, incense rising in pale spirals that twist with the wind. The fragrance of burnt herbs and scented oils merges with the familiar smells of earth and olive groves, creating a sensory tapestry that anchors villagers in the present while connecting them to patterns larger than themselves. Birds perch quietly on nearby trees, their chirping intermittent, seeming almost in dialogue with human motion. The layering of sound, footsteps, whispered chants, distant bleats of goats, rustling leaves, forms a meditative backdrop, inviting deep reflection. At these altars, villagers move in repeated patterns, offering gifts and performing gestures that have become familiar over seasons and years. Each action, pouring oil, scattering grains, bowing gently, or tracing lines in sand, is both personal and communal, a reflection of devotion, attention, and shared understanding. The repetition of these motions creates a rhythm, a slow heartbeat that underlies life in the hills and valleys. reflection arises naturally. In such observances, humans recognize order, continuity, and their place within cycles of nature and the unseen. Elders seated near the central altar watch the ebb and flow of activity with quiet attentiveness. Their measured movements, adjusting a vessel, placing a small stone in alignment with the sun, or whispering instructions to younger participants, reinforce subtle lessons in patience, observation, and respect for tradition. Internal reflection for the villagers involves both personal contemplation and social awareness. The sacred space is not only a place for individual thought, but a canvas upon which the community expresses cohesion, reverence, and shared memory. The interplay of sunlight and shadow marks time with gentle precision. As the sun rises, rays spill over the terraces and hillsides, illuminating patterns carved into stone and wood. Shadows shift slowly, tracing the passage of the day across offerings, altars, and gathered participants. Reflection deepens. The natural world itself becomes a participant in ritual, a guide for human understanding of cycles, time, and balance. The gentle, measured passage of light reminds villagers of the care, attention, and patience required to live in harmony with both nature and the sacred. During the quiet moments between actions, villagers pause to inhale deeply. The aroma of burning incense, of olive oil and grain, of sun-warmed stone, of surrounding groves. The tactile experience, hands tracing grooves in stone, feeling the weight of offering vessels, brushing fingers over smooth clay, anchors each person in the present. Reflection considers the dual nature of sacred spaces, a grounding in the tangible world and an invitation to commune with forces unseen, to cultivate internal rhythm, moral awareness, and a sense of shared purpose. Evenings in these sacred spaces bring new subtleties. Shadows deepen and stretch across terraces, flickering fires cast warm, moving light, and incense curls upward in slow, unpredictable spirals. Villagers kneel or stand in quiet contemplation, listening to the soft whisper of the wind, the distant murmur of flowing water, or the low bleating of goats returning to pens. Each sound is noticed, each smell registered, and each movement internalized. Reflection lingers on how communal attention, repeated action, and patient observation create cohesion and resilience, embedding rhythm and order into everyday life. During ritual celebrations, marking planting, harvest, or seasonal change, the sacred spaces swell with quiet activity. Offerings are multiplied, chants and soft songs fill the air, and the movement of participants becomes a synchronized dance of devotion and observation. Every gesture, every placement of an object, and every uttered phrase follows a slow, careful pattern. Internal reflection shows that through these rituals, villagers develop not only reverence but understanding. Patterns repeated over years instill a sense of stability, ethical guidance, and continuity that transcends individual lifetimes. Nightfall transforms the sacred spaces into zones of quiet reflection. Stars begin to emerge, scattered across dark skies, mirrored faintly in pools of water near shrines. Shadows of altars, trees, and groves stretch long across the earth. Villagers sit or stand silently, gazing upward, tracing constellations that mark time and season, observing the natural rhythm mirrored in the heavens. Internal reflection considers the interconnection of earth, sky, and human practice. The sacred is everywhere, both in crafted altars and the infinite cycles above. The gentle flicker of candle or oil lamp light accentuates textures: carved stone, rough wood, smoothed clay. The layering of sound, scent, and visual detail envelops participants in a meditative environment where reflection flows naturally. Villagers understand that such sacred spaces are both anchors and guides. They cultivate patience, communal cohesion, and attentive observation. Through repetition and rhythm, the small acts of ritual embed values, mark cycles, and provide lessons in order and mindfulness. By the late hours, the sacred space is quiet again. Fires burn low, Incense smoke lingers faintly and the hillsides fall into darkness. Yet the patterns of ritual repeated through generations have left subtle impressions. The careful alignment of stone and offering, the rhythm of movement, the echo of chant. Villagers retreat to homes and terraces, carrying these lessons inward, reflecting on the steady, patient cultivation of sacred practice, order, and community. These spaces, though simple in form, become enduring touchstones of continuity, guiding villagers in both thought and action across seasons and years. In the end, the sacred spaces are more than physical structures. They are repositories of collective wisdom, rhythm, and observation. The interplay of sight, sound, smell, and touch teaches what cannot be conveyed by words alone, that attention, patience, and repeated action create order, connection, and understanding. Reflection lingers on the gentle, profound truth that human life, like the movement of sun, wind, and stars, is sustained and shaped by reverence, ritual, and careful observation. As twilight descends over the hills and valleys, the first stars begin to pierce the deepening indigo of the sky. Shadows stretch across stone terraces, olive groves, and the worn paths between homes, softening into a quiet calm. The air cools, carrying the subtle scent of tilled earth, crushed herbs, and the lingering warmth of sun-warmed stones. Farmers, sailors, and elders pause from daily labor to lift their eyes skyward, tracing the slow emergence of constellations, the delicate curve of the moon, and the shifting positions of wandering planets. The world feels both vast and intimate, a quiet expanse in which human life is delicately attuned to the movements above. Children, barefoot and still for the first time in the day, imitate their elders, pointing to patterns of stars, murmuring names of familiar shapes. The tactile rhythm of stepping over terraces, pressing hands to cool stone, or leaning against carved walls to steady themselves becomes intertwined with the visual rhythm of the heavens. Every glittering point of light invites reflection. The passage of days and months, the marking of seasons, the subtle indications of when to plant, when to harvest, and when to set out on the sea. The patterns of the cosmos mirror the patterns of Earth, and in their repetition, villagers find both guidance and reassurance. The gentle, almost imperceptible sounds of the night underscore the observation. The distant bleat of goats returning to pens, the soft slap of waves against rocky coves, and the rustle of leaves in the evening breeze create a layered soundtrack. These sounds anchor the villagers, a reminder of their connection to land, water, and the living world below the infinite sky. Reflection deepens. Human beings exist in a continuum, shaped by forces both terrestrial and celestial, requiring careful observation, attentiveness, and patience to navigate successfully. Elders, leaning on wooden staffs or resting against stone altars, trace lines from one star to another, noting their positions relative to landmarks on Earth. They recall the previous year, the flooding of rivers, the timing of the first olive harvest, the safe passage of fishing boats across calm coves. Every movement of the heavens is linked to practical knowledge, a quiet, patient calculation accumulated over generations. The internal reflection of villagers extends beyond mere survival. It encompasses wonder, humility, and a sense of smallness within the vast order of the cosmos. Sailors near coastal settlements pay particular attention, their eyes scanning the sky for the subtle shimmer of stars above the horizon, tracing the moon's phases, and sensing the slow rotation of the night sky. The gentle slap of waves against wooden hulls provides a meditative rhythm, reinforcing the need for timing, careful measurement, and attentiveness. Each observation becomes both practical and contemplative. Navigation, orientation, and prediction are interwoven with the experience of beauty, stillness, and awe. Even those who remain on land, the farmers, shepherds, and potters, notice the same constellations, seeing in them signs of change. The gradual shift of Orion, the rise of the Pleiades, the silvery crescent of the moon over distant hills, all serve as markers for planting, harvesting, and ritual. Fingers trace imagined lines in the air, in the dust, or along the grooves of carved stones as elders teach younger villagers to read the night sky. Reflection meditates on how observation of the heavens fosters patience, planning, and a sense of rhythm, as natural cycles above inform cycles below. Throughout the night, constellations slowly drift across the dome of the sky. Villagers notice the stars' gentle movement against the dark backdrop, and the repetition of patterns becomes a subtle lullaby of continuity. Even in silence, learning continues. Young and old absorb not just celestial positions but the methodical, careful attention required to track them. Observation is repetition. Repetition cultivates understanding. Understanding informs life. Every glance upward becomes a lesson in timing, foresight, and the interconnectedness of all things. The air is cool and carries the faint scent of crushed herbs and dried grasses, the lingering heat from stone walls, and the faint saltiness of distant sea breezes. These sensory cues blend with the visual spectacle to form a fully immersive experience. Reflection lingers on the unity of sensory input and intellectual engagement. Seeing, hearing, feeling, and smelling the world in tandem creates a holistic understanding, a quiet discipline that informs decisions both mundane and critical. Occasionally, the villagers whisper soft observations. A star rising earlier than the previous night, a cloud moving across a particular constellation, the moon's crescent fading toward darkness. Each detail is noted with care, remembered for the future, and quietly shared. The repetition of nightly observation builds a rhythm akin to a heartbeat, steady and meditative, reinforcing internal and communal knowledge alike. Children and learners are taught to pause, to watch, to measure, and to reflect. The cosmos becomes a patient teacher, its lessons absorbed in silence and gentle attentiveness. By the time the moon climbs high, casting silver light over hills, terraces, and olive groves, the villagers' contemplation has settled into stillness. Patterns of light and shadow, constellations and lunar phases are etched into memory, forming a slow, reflective rhythm that mirrors life itself. Internal reflection emphasizes that knowledge, order, and understanding are not abrupt discoveries, but the accumulated result of patient attention, repeated observation, and careful reflection. In these quiet hours, the heavens are both map and mirror. They mark time, guide action, and reflect the cycles of human life. Farmers learn when to sow and when to reap. Sailors learn when to depart and when to anchor. Families learn to celebrate and to observe rituals in alignment with natural rhythms. The subtle, patient alignment of human activity with the eternal movement of stars instills not only practical wisdom but a sense of wonder, humility, and enduring continuity. As the night wanes, the first hint of dawn tinges the horizon. Villagers lower their eyes from the heavens, carrying the lessons of constellations, moonlight, and celestial rhythm into the day ahead. The soft sounds of awakening, bleating goats, murmuring streams, and the wind in olive trees blend with memories of the stars. Reflection lingers on the continuity of knowledge. As one night ends and another begins, the rhythms of the heavens guide human action, instilling patience, awareness, and a sense of enduring order that will carry across generations. The observation of the heavens becomes an intimate practice, a nightly conversation with the cosmos, a rhythm repeated, absorbed, and internalized. In watching, reflecting, and aligning with celestial patterns, the people of the city-states cultivate foresight, patience, and a deep sense of connection to the natural and eternal cycles around them. These quiet, attentive nights leave an imprint, a slow but enduring thread of wisdom woven into the very fabric of community life. The sun climbs higher over the Aegean hills, warming stone terraces and olive groves, yet a subtle tension lingers in the air. Beyond the valley ridges, neighboring city-states emerge as faint silhouettes, their smoke rising from distant hearths, signaling the presence of other lives, other ambitions. Travelers on dusty paths carry news of disputes over fertile land, access to fresh water, and trade routes along the winding rivers and sunlit coasts. The villagers pause, listening to the rustle of leaves, the soft clatter of tools, and the distant bleat of animals, attuning themselves to the rhythm of everyday life while holding a quiet awareness of potential friction. Warriors practice formations on terraces, their sandals scuffing the dust, the glint of bronze and iron catching sunlight. Young men mimic the gestures of elders, raising wooden spears, holding shields, and packing measured steps along worn paths. The soft hum of their movements blends with the natural sounds of life. Goats nibbling at shrubs, the splash of fish in a nearby stream, the wind sighing through olive branches. Each repetition, each careful step, is a lesson in discipline, coordination, and the subtle choreography of conflict. Reflection meditates on how preparation and observation of both land and neighbor cultivate a cautious respect, an awareness of potential threats, and the early development of strategy. In the villages, elders gather on stone terraces, observing distant hills and valleys with patient attention. Their eyes trace the faint trails of travelers, the distant glow of hearth fires, and the positions of neighboring settlements. Their hands rest on carved staves or folded laps as they weigh reports from messengers, interpret rumors, and anticipate the movements of others. The tactile sensation of smooth, worn stone under fingertips, combined with the visual rhythm of landscape and settlement, anchors thought in both place and purpose. Reflection lingers on the subtle interweaving of vigilance, foresight, and restraint, the understanding that rivalry need not erupt into chaos if tempered by observation, patience, and careful diplomacy. Messengers arrive from nearby city-states, their footsteps stirring dust along stone-paved roads. They carry words of negotiation, warnings, or proposals, their gestures deliberate and voices measured. The faint metallic ring of armor and the soft creak of leather harnesses punctuate their passage. Villagers and elders listen attentively, noting every inflection, pause, and gesture. Reflection emphasizes the delicate balance between caution and engagement, how rivalry can teach negotiation, careful planning, and the cultivation of patience as a necessary complement to assertiveness. Occasionally, emissaries gather at neutral points, hilltops, river crossings, or open squares where olive trees cast long shadows. Here, gestures and small actions are loaded with meaning. The placing of a foot, the bow of a head, the careful presentation of gifts. The tactile sensation of carved stone underfoot, the scent of crushed herbs carried by the breeze, and the warmth of sun on exposed skin heighten awareness, forcing deliberate attention. Every exchanged word, measured or soft, forms a pattern, an unspoken rhythm of diplomacy, repetition, and observation. Internal reflection dwells on how these small, repeated acts of negotiation lay the groundwork for broader social cohesion, even amidst competition. Children and apprentices observe from safe distances, learning subtle cues from the movements of adults. The raising of a hand, the tilt of a head, the careful packing of a warrior or envoy, each is a lesson in anticipation, perception, and the timing of action. The air carries the mixed scents of dust, sweat, olive leaves, and cooking fires, forming a full sensory map of the moment. Reflection considers how rivalry teaches not only strategy and negotiation, but also attention, observation, and the cultivation of a patient mind, qualities as essential as physical skill. Even during moments of tension, daily life continues with quiet rhythm. Farmers tend terraces, plucking olives and observing the alignment of sunlight on stone steps. Potters shape clay on wheels, listening to the soft whir of rotation and the gentle hiss of water on hands. Fishermen cast nets into calm coves, noting currents and reflections on the water's surface. Reflection meditates on the coexistence of vigilance and routine, the interweaving of rivalry and daily life, and the subtle reinforcement of community bonds in the face of external pressures. When disputes rise to mild skirmishes, movement and sound are measured, not chaotic. Dust swirls softly beneath sandals, spears meet shields with muted clangs and the rhythm of strategy. The careful positioning of foot, step, and formation dictates the pace. The sensory world intensifies, the warmth of exertion on skin, the scent of sun-baked earth, the metallic tang of bronze, the vibration of shield and spear through hands. Reflection focuses on the paradox of conflict. Within structured rivalry, communities learn coordination, discipline, and the measured application of force, understanding that even in competition, order can emerge through repetition and attentiveness. Evening brings a calm return to observation. From terraces and hilltops, elders watch as smoke rises from neighboring settlements, the silhouettes of distant trees, and the faint glimmer of torchlight across rivers. The air carries both the scent of herbs and the subtle apprehension of uncertainty, yet life continues. Reflection emphasizes the slow cultivation of strategic thought, patience, and awareness, the lessons of rivalry embedded into the rhythms of daily life, preparing the community for future negotiation, defense, and collaboration. Nightfall wraps the valley in deep indigo. Stars trace eternal patterns across the sky, mirroring the slow, deliberate cycles of rivalry and diplomacy below. The soft rustle of olive leaves, the bleating of goats, and the distant lap of waves form a backdrop of continuity, reminding villagers that observation, patience, and reflection are constant companions. Internal reflection meditates on how rivalry shapes identity, not through sudden violence or unchecked ambition, but through repeated observation, careful attention, and the cultivation of understanding that extends across generations. Through these quiet, measured interactions, the city-states learn that social cohesion can coexist with competition. Every skirmish, negotiation, and watchful pause teaches timing, patience, and strategic thought. Patterns are repeated, absorbed, and internalized, forming the subtle framework of governance, defense, and communal life. Reflection closes on the insight that rivalry, when tempered with observation and deliberate action, contributes not only to survival, but to the slow shaping of enduring civic identity. The morning sun spreads slowly across the hills, brushing golden light over stone-paved lanes and the rough-hewn facades of houses. The warmth touches the edges of terraced gardens, glinting on olive leaves and highlighting the subtle grains of the limestone that forms the village's foundation. Smoke rises lazily from small kilns where clay begins to harden under gentle fire, curling upward in thin ribbons before dissolving into the crisp air. Each wisp carries the faint, sweet smell of baked earth, mingling with the aroma of freshly ground barley and herbs. In these moments, the village feels suspended, caught between the quiet of dawn and the deliberate hum of emerging activity. Inside a workshop, the soft scrape of a chisel against stone punctuates the rhythm of life. Hands, worn but steady, guide the tool carefully, removing minute fragments from a small statue destined to watch over the temple altar. Dust swirls in lazy spirals, catching sunlight, and settles over forearms, knuckles, and the coarse linen of a worker's sleeve. Nearby, the warmth of the kiln radiates through bare feet resting on the cool stone floor, offering a tactile contrast that draws attention to the body's subtle, continuous connection to the environment. The act of shaping stone is slow, patient, and deliberate, each movement an echo of generations who learned to coax beauty from the earth without haste. Across the square, another artisan kneads clay with wet, practiced hands, feeling its pliability and listening to its faint, moist sigh as it yields beneath fingers. The clay is cool, earthy, and slightly gritty, carrying the faint scent of the riverbeds where it was gathered. With gentle, circular motions, the potter shapes the base of a vessel, pressing and smoothing, correcting minute imperfections as if conversing with the material itself. A child watches nearby, fingertips brushing the rough edge, imitating the motions with clumsy curiosity, absorbing not only the technique but the reverence with which the work is approached. The teacher glances at the observer with quiet acknowledgement, noting that skill is transmitted as much through observation, repetition, and reflection as through instruction. In another corner of the village, the ring of hammers echoes softly against bronze and copper. A metalsmith shapes a small knife, testing each edge, listening to the tone it produces as it strikes a block of stone. Sparks leap in quiet arcs, the smell of heated metal mixing with the faint tang of soot. Each movement is measured, repeated, refined, not rushed, but drawn out, as if time itself bends around the rhythm of creation. Here, utility and beauty intertwine. The knife must cut effectively, but it must also reflect the care and skill of its maker, a tangible expression of human presence and intention. The village itself feels alive with these patterns of making. Smoke drifts from the kilns and hearths, mingling with the scent of fresh herbs, wet stone, and baked clay. The soft scrape of tools, the gentle tap of mallets, and the low murmur of conversation create a subtle soundscape, a layered rhythm that marks the passage of hours without fanfare. There is a continuity in these sounds, the repetition of labor, the echo of centuries that becomes almost meditative, a quiet reassurance that human effort, carefully applied, is capable of shaping the world. Women move along the lanes, carrying baskets of herbs, grains, or pottery shards destined for further refinement. Their footsteps are soft, deliberate. The texture of sun-warmed stone presses gently against their sandals. They pause occasionally to inspect a pot cooling near the kiln, to arrange tools on a shelf, or to observe a child mimicking a parent's gesture. These small, repeated motions form a rhythm, a living cadence that structures the village's day and reinforces communal identity. Every action, even seemingly ordinary, carries weight and intention, linking individual effort to the broader tapestry of shared life. Observing all this, elders reflect on the passage of time and the persistence of skill. Each chiseled stone, each molded pot, and each hammered knife embodies lessons learned over generations. The repetition of craft becomes a form of meditation, a slow accumulation of knowledge that anchors community and culture. Elders note how observation and practice cultivate patience, attention, and humility. The hands must learn to listen, to wait, and to respond with care. There is an awareness that mastery is not achieved in haste, but emerges gradually, through cycles of creation, correction, and quiet reflection. The children in the village, moving through these spaces, absorb these rhythms unconsciously. Fingers brush clay, ears catch the resonance of a struck metal, eyes trace the form of a carved stone. They imitate, falter, correct, and repeat, not merely to learn the skill itself, but to internalize the patterns of attention, patience, and reverence that underpin it. Observation becomes as much a teacher as instruction. Repetition is both practice and meditation. In this way, the culture of craftsmanship becomes inseparable from the culture of life, shaping values, habits, and even thought. Beyond the workshops, the village stretches toward the olive groves and the rolling hills. The sensory continuity of labor reaches into the fields. Farmers press olives into stone presses with slow, steady motion. The subtle aroma of oil and crushed leaves mingles with the earthy smell of tilled soil. The same principles govern both domains of patience, rhythm, and awareness, whether in shaping metal and clay or in coaxing sustenance from the land. In each action, the villagers sense a dialogue with their environment. The material speaks, responds, and guides, if only the hands and eyes are attuned to it. The sun climbs higher and light shifts, dancing across the uneven surfaces of terraced roofs and stone walls. Shadows stretch and retract slowly, marking time as the villagers continue their careful work. Kilns hiss as heat escapes, chisels scrape against stone, and hammers strike copper with precise intent. The soundscape is layered, almost hypnotic, encouraging reflection on the continuity of human effort and the subtle interconnection between skill, environment, and communal life. Each repeated motion reinforces a sense of order, cohesion, and purpose, the tangible and intangible threads that hold the village together. Internal reflection extends beyond the immediate labor. Crafts are more than utility. They are vessels of memory, symbols of identity, and conduits of culture. A finely shaped pot, a decorated knife, a carefully carved statue, all carry the mark of the maker and the imprint of a community. These creations endure beyond the day, beyond the season, perhaps even beyond the life of their creator, linking past, present, and future. In the repetition and refinement of craft, villagers experience the quiet satisfaction of contributing to something larger than themselves, a continuum of human ingenuity and care. As dusk approaches, the workshops gradually fall silent. Clay rests, metal cools, and chisels lay still beside partially completed sculptures. The aroma of fired clay mingles with the evening air, carrying hints of smoke, dust, and oil. Villagers gather near hearths, sharing quiet conversation, tasting bread and olives, and allowing the day's work to settle within their awareness. The slow, repeated motions of the day, from shaping stone to molding clay, from hammering metal to arranging tools, leave an imprint not only on objects but on minds and spirits, embedding patience, observation, and harmony with the world. Finally, as twilight deepens, lanterns flicker along stone paths. Shadows stretch across the walls and the village hums with a gentle, steady presence. The echo of hands and eyes attuned to material, rhythm, and purpose. Internal reflection lingers on the subtle balance of skill, labor, and community. How each motion, repeated over time, fosters cohesion and identity, and how the quiet work of making sustains life, culture, and legacy. In this slow, deliberate, and contemplative engagement with the world, the village embodies an enduring lesson that order, beauty, and memory are built patiently, through care, repetition, and attention to the small, sensory, and meaningful details of everyday life. The morning light stretches lazily across the coast, touching the calm waters of distant harbors and the soft, rolling hills that meet the sea. Wooden boats sway gently at their moorings, their hulls creaking faintly as the tide laps against them, a quiet rhythm that seems almost like a heartbeat of the land itself. Early settlers prepare to depart, packing jars of olive oil, woven baskets of grains, small clay vessels, and the delicate tools of daily life. The scent of salt mingles with the earthy aroma of freshly tilled soil, and for a moment, the air is filled with the subtle hum of anticipation, the quiet thrill of stepping into new lands, of shaping a world yet untouched by hands like theirs. Children run along the pebble-strewn shoreline, their laughter echoing softly against the hills, while elders watch with calm, attentive eyes, noting the patterns of the waves, the shifting clouds, and the gentle breeze. These elders, who have guided the settlement through seasons of planting and harvest, trade and debate, now observe the continuity of life unfolding beyond familiar valleys. Their thoughts dwell on the intricate balance of risk and opportunity, the careful selection of distant lands for their fertility, their defensibility, the quality of water, the closeness to trade routes, and the quiet assurance that these settlements will extend the community's influence and knowledge across the Aegean. Each step toward the boats is deliberate, measured, reflecting the rhythm ingrained through years of tending land and sea, of learning to read the cycles of sun and moon, and of understanding the delicate interplay between human endeavor and natural order. The settlers move with the gentle precision of those who know that patience is not a pause but a guiding principle, that preparation and foresight are as vital as courage, and that every gesture, every placement of a basket, every lash of a rope, every careful inspection of grain stores, carries the weight of continuity. The boats glide out onto the water, oars dipping in synchronized motion. The sound is soft and hypnotic, a cadence that mirrors the gentle rolling of the hills they leave behind. Sailors adjust small triangular sails to catch the light morning breeze, feeling the tension of fabric and the pull of the wind with a tactile awareness that comes only from long experience. The scent of the sea, salt, brine, and the faint hint of seaweed fills their senses, mingling with the earthy aroma of the provisions they carry. Reflections run through their minds as they watch the coastline recede. The sense of leaving a place that nurtured them, of carrying with them the habits, skills, and knowledge of generations, and the quiet hope that these patterns will find fertile ground wherever they make their new homes. Along the shore, the land itself seems to pause in recognition of this measured exodus. Olive groves sway gently in the breeze, their leaves whispering a soft farewell. The stone terraces, worn smooth by years of labor, glimmer with dew and sun, echoing the persistent rhythms of planting, tending, and harvest. Fishermen in the cove cast nets one last time, watching the gentle ripple of water as if to mark the passage of history itself. Every small act, lifting a basket, tying a knot, guiding an oar, is suffused with a sense of continuity, the recognition that these gestures, repeated across generations, are what make a civilization endure. As the settlers reach distant coves and river mouths, they begin the careful work of establishing new homes. Pebbles are arranged for small paths, clay is gathered for kilns and ovens, and terraces are leveled for planting. The soundscape is gentle but layered. The lap of waves, the distant call of gulls, the clatter of tools, and the quiet murmur of voices coordinating tasks. Here in this new place, the settlers' understanding of the land's rhythm becomes essential. Water must be guided to terraces, salt must be washed from soils, and the placement of every tree, vine, and olive sapling is deliberate. Reflection settles in like a soft tide. The settlers understand that expansion is not merely a movement of bodies but a careful transference of knowledge, culture, and community. Every ritual observed, every harvest technique applied, every path cut into the hillside carries a story, a lesson, a fragment of identity. In planting olives, building kilns, or tracing paths for water channels, they are not just shaping a landscape, they are shaping continuity itself, ensuring that the lessons of earlier generations endure, even in unfamiliar terrain. As evening falls, the new settlements take on a quiet glow. Fires flicker within the modest homes, casting long shadows over stone walls and terraces. The smell of cooking mingles with the fresh, tangy scent of the sea. Children, exhausted but curious, explore the edge of the harbor, while elders sit in calm reflection, observing the careful patterns of life taking hold. Stars begin to appear overhead, and with them comes the timeless rhythm of navigation and observation, linking these distant lands to the familiar constellations back home. The story closes on this serene, reflective note. The Aegean landscape stretches wide, dotted now not only with the original city-states, but also with carefully chosen settlements along coasts and rivers, each echoing the rhythms of life, labor, and learning. Internal reflection emphasizes that these expansions were not hurried or chaotic, but deliberate, patient, and deeply aligned with nature and community. Through careful observation, repeated practice, and thoughtful action, the city-states extended their influence, knowledge, and culture, leaving a legacy that would endure far beyond their rugged hills and sun-drenched shores. The gentle lap of waves, the scent of olive trees, and the quiet glow of evening fires serve as enduring witnesses to a civilization built on patience, reflection, and the slow, deliberate weaving of human life into the rhythms of the land and sea.